So I saw A Complete Unknown for the second time last night. Finally, took me a while to get around to it, but I'm really glad it's still in theaters. And now that it's been nominated for a bunch of Oscars, it's probably not going away anytime soon. So if you have not seen it, get out there and see this movie while in theaters while you still can, because it is well worth it. So I have some follow-up thoughts after seeing it for a second time. I want to get more into the details of the film because my first video was kind of spoiler free, even though this isn't really the kind of movie that you can spoil, but you kind of can. I think it's better that you don't know much about how it unfolds, even though you might be familiar with Dylan's overall history and story and so forth. It's better to go in clean. Just go see it. Just go see it. So yeah, it was only like yesterday, I think, that I caught up with the fact that the Oscar nominations have been announced. I'm happy to see that Complete Unknown has been nominated for a bunch of stuff, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Timothée Chalamet, of course, Best Supporting Actress, Monica Barbaro, Best Supporting Actor, Edward Norton, hell yes, right on, Best Adapted Screenplay. For those of you who don't know, it's A Complete Unknown is based on a book called Dylan Goes Electric by Elijah Wald, which the Dylan estate, and I didn't know this until last night, the whole reason this thing got started in the first place is that the Dylan estate optioned movie rights from this book, of all books, you know. I don't even know if Dylan read that book, but he did say he may have, because in this famous tweet he put out praising the film and praising Timothée's performance, he says, it's based on this book by Elijah Wald. And he says, after you see the movie, read the book. He probably read the book because he also took a keen interest in this script, which he didn't have to. He really didn't have to, but I think that his involvement in this, as I said last time, really helped to make this movie exceptional in a way that you wouldn't have expected from an artist actually getting involved in his own biopic. But yeah, and I have not read this book by Elijah Wald. There's some really great interviews out there with him about this film that I highly recommend that you read. I may drop some links into the description and the pinned comment on this video. Yeah, getting back to the nominations. Best Adapted Screenplay. That's great. That's Jay Cox and James Mangold. They didn't get Best Cinematography. They should have. Best Costume Design, Ariane Phillips. That totally makes sense. That's very good. That's very cool. They should have got Best Production Design too. They didn't. I kind of think they should have gotten Best Original Score, even though that doesn't really apply, because there really isn't a score in this film. It's basically just the songs that are being performed. And sometimes I think elements from some of the songs. There's a couple of scenes where there's this kind of drone going on, which is probably taken from the guitar or the organ from one of the recordings they did. Best Sound. So there you go. And is that it? I think that's it. I applaud all of these. I think it's a shame that Elle Fanning didn't get nominated for Best Supporting Actress as well, because she is also fantastic. And I think she's one of the things that makes this film really work so beautifully well, because she's essential. she's of course, Elle Fanning is playing a character named Sylvie Russo in the movie, but she is based on Suze Rotolo, who was Dylan's girlfriend. She's also the woman who's walking and, clinging to his arm down the street on the cover of Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. And Suze was his girlfriend, who was immensely influential on him at the time. And the film does depict her, I think, pretty well. And I'm not an expert on this. And I know some of you in the comments of the last video know a lot more about her than I do. I have not read her book yet. I've heard it's good. But one of the things that's really touching about this, what I didn't mention last time, the character of Sylvie, based on Suze, the reason why she's called Sylvie is because Bob, when he was sitting down with James Mangold and going over the script, he requested that they change her name just out of respect, because he just didn't, something along the lines of, she didn't ask for this life. She kind of got caught up in the madness of his career. Even though they it didn't work out in the long run with them, I think that she remained somebody who was very special to him. And this, having her name changed, I think, was just out of respect for her. And I think that's really beautiful, actually. So that's probably the biggest mark that Dylan himself left on this film, is the fact that he had Suze's name changed. Even though everybody knows who she is already, it's more of an act of respect, I think, to her, which I think is very touching. So, but yeah, I think Elle should have gotten a nomination too. there are two climactic scenes at the end of the movie, and one of them is right before there's Elle Sylvia accompanies Dylan to Newport, the Newport Folk Festival in '65, but then she leaves when she realizes that she can't handle it because she can see the connection that he has with Joan, and it breaks her heart. Of course, he had cheated on her with Joan before this, earlier in the film, and so she leaves, and when she leaves, very upset. And Dylan catches up with her, very Hollywood-like, catches up with her at the ferry before she leaves on the ferry. And they have this really touching goodbye to each other when they're separated by this chain link fence. And he's reaching through to wipe her tears off. And they harken back to the movie that they saw together on their first date. And it's just beautiful. And then, of course, the other big climactic moment is the electric set at Newport, which I have to say is so exhilarating. I almost that scene, the way they depicted that, and I don't even know. Some of it I think is accurate, and a lot of it isn't. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. But it is so exhilarating. That whole scene is just so. It's amazing what they did with that. So the thing that I went to go see this movie the second time alone on purpose this time because I really wanted to kind of sit and soak it in on my own. So I just sat up close and just took it in, and I found myself welling up with tears almost the entire time, and it's crazy. And it's really hard to articulate why it moves me so much. Maybe this is something I may have to sit down and write about because I haven't really gotten to the core of this what it is about this film that makes me so emotional when I'm watching it. But one of the scenes where I really just kind of lost it was, I think, the scene at Newport 64 where he's singing "The Times They Are Changin'." He's singing the song and the crowd is cheering just with joy, just completely joyfully cheering every single line of every verse. They're cheering. It's emotional because you feel like all those kids, all those people who were at the festival felt like justice was being expressed, and things really were changing, and the world was opening up, and it's just, I wasn't even there. Obviously, I wasn't even born yet when that happened, but I was chatting with somebody in the comments earlier today on my first video that a lot of people have said, this fellow was one of those people who said that the film he was alive at the time, and this film took him back and made him feel like he was back there again. This film does have that power, and it made me feel like I was there. No, actually, it made me feel like I am there. When you're watching it, it's just like I wasn't there, but it makes me feel like not that I was there, but that when you're watching it, you are there. And it's incredibly immersive. And that is one of the tremendous superpowers of this film is this power of immersion. So I want to get into a couple of things. It was very amusing to me and upsetting in a way at how angry some people got with me about a couple of things that I said in the last video. One of them is that, the title of the last video was this film is going to change lives. I really do believe that, but a lot of people had a hard time. Maybe they misunderstood what I meant by that. And I think a lot of people have different concept of what a life-changing event is. Because a lot of people either were confused or just angry with me that I would even suggest that. It's like, you're obviously clueless, or it's just a movie. Come on. Maybe this hasn't happened to you, but this doesn't seem like rocket science to me. I mean, where do you think filmmakers come from? Most filmmakers, if not all of them, are inspired to become filmmakers from watching movies. And many musicians, most musicians, if not all musicians, are inspired to become musicians by listening to music. So when you've got a movie about music and it's portraying music in this incredibly immersive, authentic way, it's going to reach people. And a lot of people don't realize that they have the ability to do something until they see something that kind of wakes them up. It sparks that interest in them, and they reach inside of them and they realize that it's something that they actually want to do and can do. Those are life-changing moments, and they happen all the time. Just because it isn't happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening. And I see people getting angry with me about this, and I'm very puzzled at that. So yeah, I stand by that statement. It's true. And one of the reasons why it makes me so excited is that it's stimulating. It's almost like a call to arms in a way. And it's going to have, and is, I'm sure, having the same effect on young people who aren't musicians yet, but they're going to be because of this film. That is the type of life-changing event I'm talking about. So all the people who got angry at me about that, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. You're wrong. And you can go ahead and keep being angry at me because I'm right. Anyway, another thing, and this is another thing that's going to continue to piss people off who got mad at me the first time. There were some people in the comments who got angry at me because I said that the factual inaccuracies in this film don't matter. And I'm not saying that the history doesn't matter, that the facts don't matter. Obviously, facts matter in historical accounts. History matters. History is vitally important that we remember history. And all these people who are passionate about the history, I applaud you. We need people like you. The world needs people who are passionate about history, especially now. But the point is that this film is not meant to be an accurate historical account. James Mangold himself said this it's not a Wikipedia entry. The film is telling a story that is based on Bob's life. It's not a biography. It is biographical in nature, but it is not a biography. And one of the most hilariously angry comments I got was somebody saying, "Don't you know what a biography is?" When about this issue. And yeah, I do know what a biography is. This is a biography. This is a documentary. A Complete Unknown is neither of these things. Neither. It's not a biography and it's not a documentary. And if you judge it on those terms, you are cheating yourself out of the experience that this film is offering you. But at the same time, I do sympathize and I do understand, especially Dylanologists and scholars who have steeped themselves in the history of this man. I understand that it's really hard watching a film about him to separate yourself from that knowledge. And you see things happening the way that you know they didn't happen. It is really hard to turn that off. And the analogy for this that I can sympathize with you with, the film Stop Making Sense, which is the film that changed my life. I've got a whole series of other videos I'm making about that film on this channel. I've seen it so many times, I mean, literally countless times, that I know the film backwards and forwards, just as well as I know Sergeant Pepper backwards and forwards. I know it like the back of my hand, which is a strange expression. To the point that now the film Stop Making Sense has recently been restored and remixed. For the second time, they've done a remix of the film. The sad fact is, because I am so steeped in this version of the film that came out in 1984, and this VHS, which came out in 85, that mix, that version of the film is so in me. It's so part of me. I can't watch the new film with the new mix. I can't enjoy it anymore. It's sad, but it's true. So in a way, I kind of sympathize with you Dylan heads, you Dylanologists who are watching this and going, no, that's not, the Judas moment didn't happen at Newport. That was in Manchester. I get it. I understand why this upsets you. But the point is, that's not what the film is trying to do. And let's not forget, and you don't need me to tell you guys, you don't need me to tell you that Dylan fictionalized himself. That is, after all, one of the things about him that we love, isn't it? And this movie leans into that. It makes it part of his character. And it makes a point of actually not letting you peek behind that veil, because that is a huge part of who he is and was. And this film sort of embraces that and kind of runs with that. And especially now, after seeing it for a second time, I realized that there are some scenes in the film which are almost dreamlike in quality. That scene where he meets Bob Newirth for the first time on the elevator as he's leaving the ritzy party that he was kind of getting disgusted with, because he's just surrounded by people who are wanting him to be somebody other than who he was. And so he has this conversation with Bob Newirth in the elevator, not knowing who he is yet. And the exchange they have, it just seems more like almost like a Sam Shepard play in a way. It's like this dreamlike situation, and it's great. And also, especially the Newport 65, the big electric set scene, that also kind of unfolds like a dream. Because a lot of people are getting bent out of shape that, they displaced the Judas moment from a year later, which happened in 66, and they moved it to this concert in 65. But that's not the only thing about that scene that's not factually accurate. You see Johnny Cash cheering Dylan on. He wasn't there. Johnny Cash was not there at Newport 65. Suze Rotolo, Sylvie, was there, and there's to create this, to help set up this big dramatic moment of. She wasn't there for the electric set in the movie, but she was there earlier in the day, so they can have this great dramatic scene of them saying goodbye to each other at the ferry, which is like that whole scene is actually it's like a lyric, it's like a verse from a Dylan song, just that whole setting. And but she didn't go to Newport 65. She wasn't there. So all these things are there. It's like a dream in a sense, but it's like this intense dream that feels real. And that is the power of the film. So I'm saying this with love to my fellow Dylan nerds. Please, I know it's hard. Try to turn that dial off, or at least turn it down a little bit, so you can actually meet this film on the level it's trying to reach you on. try to accept it on its own terms. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but I think it's worth it. For those of you who haven't seen it, there's this legendary press conference that Dylan gave in San Francisco, I think December of 1965. So this was a few months after the final scene in this movie, a few months after Newport 65. He gives this great press conference in front of it's almost like a play the way it unfolds, because you've got, of course, Allen Ginsberg, you've got Michael McClure, both of them beat poets. Ralph Gleason, the writer who introduces him, who he himself is such a charismatic person. It almost seems unreal that they were all in the same room together. Yeah, I mean, in that press conference, there's one journalist who is asking a weird question, like, you seem like you're soft spoken now. Now you're getting louder as you're talking about this and that, and Dylan seems to get a little frustrated with him at one point. He doesn't lose his temper, but he does get worked up a little bit when because he cuts him off. Because the guy is starting to ask him, well, when you're singing your songs, you seem to be, he's saying you're being assertive. Basically, seems to be insinuating that he's more assertive when he's singing his songs. And Bob kind of cuts him off in the middle of his question and says, well, yeah, the songs are what I do. That's what I do. I write the songs, I sing the songs, I perform the songs. That's what I do. And he says something like, it's when people try to put all this other stuff on top of it about what they think it means or what the message is, that only just brings him down. So that says so much about Bob. And I think that's kind of what this film very much embraces, is that he was known for obfuscating his past and fictionalizing himself because he didn't want to be defined by anybody else. He said, and there's that great line in the film where he's arguing with Sylvie about, because she's frustrated with him that she feels like she doesn't know him. And he says, why is that important? And she says, well, I've shared all these things about my past with you. And he goes, so what? I didn't ask you that stuff. You think that stuff defines you? He said, people make up their past, Sylvia. They remember what they want and they forget the rest. And that's it. That's what this film does. The whole thing about the Judas moment, the thing that's strikingly ironic to me about the Judas, people getting angry about the Judas moment being misrepresented in this film, the whole thing, the whole moment was a heckler who was giving Dylan shit on stage because they weren't happy with, they felt like he wasn't being who they thought he should be. And now people are getting mad at the film because they're not portraying the Judas moment the way they think it should. Like there's something sacred about the Judas moment. There's a great Larry Maslov, Mazzy, has a great channel on YouTube, part of the vinyl community. He talks a lot about Dylan, and he loved this film, and he too sympathizes with, I think, with Dylan historians who get frustrated by these things. But he says it was kind of that scene was kind of beautiful because it was like this composite of all these different moments in Dylan's life and his career, and even though it's not exactly the way it happened, it feels right. And I love the fact that we get to see that in that moment, because Dylan has his back to the audience when that happens, and the camera's on his face when that shout happens, and you see his reaction. You see, and he's sort of like, he's just disgusted. He's like, "What? Seriously, guys? I don't believe you." And some people got mad too that he, after that moment, and the real moment, the real Judas moment, he turns around to the band and says, "Play it fucking loud." And in this movie, he just says, "Play it loud." He took the F word out, and people got mad about that. So it's like, guys, you got to let, just like we need to let Bob be Bob, you need to let this film be what it is. And also cannot understate the fact, let's not lose sight of the fact that Dylan had a hand in this. He's proud of, he liked the script. That's why he wanted to meet with Mangold in the first place. And he put his touch on it. Like I said last time, he did not try to alter the message of the film. He enhanced it. The most dramatic thing he did was ask them to change Suze's name to Sylvie. And yeah, he actually added and modified and enhanced the dialogue in a lot of scenes. There is, as has been widely reported, and we may never know what the answer to this question is. This was a piece of information that was shared by Edward Norton in an interview. I don't know where it originally came from, but I found this quote in Variety, where it says, Norton says Mangold told him that Dylan insisted on putting at least one totally inaccurate moment, he won't reveal what, into a complete unknown. When the director expressed some concern about the public's reaction, as Norton tells it, Dylan stared at him. "What do you care what other people think?" And that's it. The film is telling the story that it wants to tell. And it's also the story that Dylan wanted to tell in a big way. And I think that makes it part of the whole Dylan story. So this film, I'm submitting to you, needs to be treated with the same kind of respect that the actual history needs to be treated with, that you're also upset about the film supposedly not being respectful of. So yeah, that's a lot to say. There's a lot more to be said, and I'm going to wrap it up here because I've been talking for a long time. And anyway, thank you very much for watching, y'all. My name is Chad Smalley. Rock on. I'll see you next time.